Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Jason is engineering the broadcast at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. Rich Scheben's with us. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thank you, Vincent. How are you this morning?
I am really well. I was just chatting with Jason, and I mentioned that our website is down. Email is down for, the names like instructor at USA Prepares and the other ones that are, at USA Prepares. And I was thinking, what a blessing. What do I need a website for? Why do I need to spend hard-earned money for a website? What is the purpose of that? Nobody buys anything from us. We have ProPure water filtration systems at the lowest price in the country, but people don't seem to know that. Google is not interested in making sure that we can be seen. Our website traffic is down. Our YouTube video traffic is down. So why should I spend money on a website and get threats from I don't know where telling me that they have pictures of me or Mrs. Finelli from our cameras on our PCs? I got to tell you, our computer technology is old. The monitors don't have cameras in them. We don't have a camera. I don't have a cell phone. So these threats, that we have to pay in Bitcoin, otherwise this is all going to be exposed. Go ahead. There's nothing to expose. But I really like the idea of not having email addresses where people threaten me. I really like it. I love the fact that we've dumped the parasite, the pervert, the peeping Tom, the defective, the funny looking, the ugly Facebook guy. I'm delighted that we've done that. Everybody should dump Facebook. I'm delighted that I'm not getting a barrage of emails and advertisements that I don't want. I like the fact that I'm not being tracked as much through my own doing by having an email address and through having a cell phone. I like the fact that they can't do that because I don't have one. So I just wanted to mention, class, so if you, instructors have my email address, but, outside of USA Prepares, those who need it have it. But I really like the fact of getting less emails. I really do. So there you have it. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Good. Well, Vince, as we move into this totalitarian technology, a technology by certain companies who have basically sold out the bottom 93%, the people who are willing to pay for sedition, treason, and espionage against the American people, the big tech. They offer promises of, we're going to have encryption, you'll be private, you'll have anonymity, but there's always going to be backdoor monitoring, there's always going to be leaks, there's always going to be theft, because that's how they create conformity, is through threats, intimidation, blackmail, blacklisting, shaming, bribery. That's their MO. So we have to be aware that they want websites like yours who wake up the people off the air, because this gives them more frequency of delivery for their third-party scams, which we all have to be aware of, because almost everything that goes with big tech is a scam to filter votes of Republicans and from Republicans. So we have to be aware of all these campaigns with buzzwords that have walk away, great awakening. You know, a lot of these groups are front groups for donations that go to the Democrat/globalist party. So they want people like you, like us, out of the way so they can give the illusion that they're for the Republic, that they're for the rule of law, that they're for common sense, logic, truth, objective facts versus subjective emotional opinions. They got to give the illusion they're for free speech, the illusion that they're for the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody, supply and demand, free markets. And then if you don't comply, you're a racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, conspiracy theorist, and you get demonetized. So as we head in, we're way past the 1984 Orwellian era, where there's new meanings for words and there's new terms being invented. And people need to realize that this aristocracy, which is very anti-American regarding the rest of us serfs, which are mostly patriots, is very little left-right paradigm. So we have to be aware of, and this is why we at USA Prepares connect a lot of financial, economic, social, and political dots, because they need to be connected where the mainstream media, which is owned by the elites, continue with no accountability to promote propaganda, lies, false flags, and divide and conquer strategy against we the people to cover up wealth accumulation and wealth distribution from the little guy to the elite. So in that context, they're winning. But in reality, because a lot of people don't realize how many people are waking up, I think there's a mass awakening going on right now. And Vince, we talk privately, obviously, listeners, and me and Vince. And Vince, says, I'll say something. And Vince, oh, that's a good idea. Say that on the air. Oh, Rich, yeah, say that on the air. And we have so much material prepared for a 2-hour show. Vince, aren't we lucky if we get through maybe 40%? I think that might be a high number. Even when I monologue by myself and host a show, I never get through all of it. Don't even come close. But I'm going to, with your permission, Vince, say this quote from Ayn Rand, because you said, you keep telling me, Rich, you got to keep saying that more often. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to mention this short quote, okay?
Please do.
Okay. When you see that trading is done by compulsion and not consent, when you see that dollars or money is flowing to those who deal not in goods but in favors, when you see that men get richer by graft and by pull, which is basically deceit and fraud, and using one's position in hierarchy, especially public office, to obtain profits or advantages, and your laws don't protect you against them but protect them against you. When you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you know your society is doomed. And there's just one article right here. California state worker taking home up to $456,000 in checks hoarded for vacation days. And there's article after article after article of basically billions of dollars of debt coming from government workers who are paid for by the taxpayers. And this particular story I just mentioned, after 36 years as a California government transportation engineer, his name, or her name, is Bijan Sartipi. And of course, I'm probably butchering their name, but he was paid $405,000 for time off he never used. So this is the bogus crap that's happening in America right now. and there's no legitimacy for it. There's no rule of law. Basically, they can do whatever they want. If you're in the system and part of the big corporate corrupt system, or the big government corrupt system, or the big corporate oligarchy, you can basically write yourself a check. You can sell out to the establishment and do and get whatever you want, while the bottom 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So this is what we're dealing with, and this is why this quote from Ayn Rand from Atlas Shrugged, which I gleaned initially off the X-22 report, by the way, is so relevant to society today. Vincent?
There's a gal who is really neat. Her name was Carrie Nation. Carrie was her first name. Her last name was the word nation, Nation. Her middle initial was A. So Carrie A. Nation. She was born in 1846, died in 1911. She was an activist beyond belief. And she thought that she needed to do something to fix the system. And this was before Prohibition. But she believed, rightfully so, that the American immigrants would go to work. The men would go to work Monday through Friday. They would work really hard in the mines, in the factories, laboring, digging ditches, really hard manual work. And the guys would think that on Friday, payday, that they deserved a break. So they'd go to the saloon. They'd go to the, what we'd now call a bar. And by the end of Friday night or Saturday morning when they stumbled home, many of them, too many of them, took out whatever they wanted to take out on their wives and their families. So there would be what was called marital rape. The wives would be beaten. The money would be gone. The wives would be trying to figure out how they can feed their children because the husband just squandered the money at the saloons. Well, in order to do something about it, she decided to organize. And she did something that I thought was pretty cool. She was known for hatcheteering. Hatchet, earring. Hatcheteering. She would go into bars, saloons, with a hatchet and destroy them. And she's been arrested many times, but she continued. Ultimately, her work paid off with Prohibition. We'll be right back. So why am I mentioning Carrie A. Nation and hatcheteering? Well, she went into saloons with her hatchet and just destroyed the places. As a matter of fact, when saloon owners saw her coming, they would close. They'd close the saloon so she couldn't get in and destroy it. She was a one-man saloon demolition team. One person. Well, here's what happened back then. We're talking in the early 1800s. Breweries funded saloons. So anybody who wanted to own a saloon could. If they sold one brand of beer, the brewery would fund the tables, the chairs, the stools. They'd provide all this stuff. The bar stools, the beer, even the spittoons. So what are these names of these breweries? Well, the 11 oldest breweries in the United States that are still operating: Yuengling, F&M Schaefer Brewing, Pabst Brewing, Anheuser-Busch, Miller, Stevens Point Brewery, August Shell Brewing, and there's another one. So these breweries enabled individuals to set up their saloons and help them financially, provided just about everything they needed. Now, in bed with these breweries, fleecing the hardworking American laborer were the politicians in the city and county government corporations. So the Politicians are supposed to be protecting, allegedly, the Americans, but they're in bed with the breweries who are fleecing the American laborer. And actually, one of these political fleecing types had the last name of Kennedy, who through a couple generations of work were able to garner enough money through alcohol sales to buy the presidency. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So the point here is there's nothing new. Corporations get involved with politicians. The politicians are paid to look the other way. The politicians enrich themselves at the expense of everybody else. The corporations enrich themselves. And what are we left with? We're the bottom 93%, eternally being fleeced. So in my book of heroes is Carrie A. Nation and her hatcheteering. She had the guts, the stamina, the courage, the conviction to go out all by herself, a woman, all by herself, and take on the system. Ultimately, after she died, there was prohibition. She won. She just didn't know it. And am I against alcohol? No, I'm not. Have I had alcohol? Sure. Do I like beer? Once in a while. Do I buy beer? Hardly ever. But I think if a person wants to drink beer, that's great. But to allow the fleecing of people, allow the losing of their wages, there's got to be a better way. And I think she brought it to the fore. But they took it too far. With prohibition, they stopped alcohol. And that's where the money was really made, during prohibition. Rich, we've been fleeced for so long that maybe, and I'm not advocating this, let me say it a different way, I'm not advocating it, but I think it's coming back. The hatcheteering, and it may not be in the form of a hatchet. It may be in another form. But the bottom 93, us, we've had it. We've had it. And that's why I said about the email addresses, the website, the threats leveled at us. I don't need it. I really don't need it. Is it doing anything for me? No. Nope. It's not. So why would I want to continue this? I'm trying to figure that out. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us. Rich, bottom of the hour news. We heard an announcement that there's a recall of 1.1 million Hondas because of defective Takata airbags. Takata airbags are subject to the largest recall in U.S. history. The cause of the defect is the use of ammonium nitrate in the airbag inflator, which degrades over time. The degradation can cause the airbag to explode, and that hurls metal debris toward the vehicle occupants. There's an explosion, an ammonium nitrate explosion. The same combination of chemicals that has been blamed for the Alfred Muir building destruction in Oklahoma City. Remember Timothy McVeigh? That explosion. That's what the alleged authorities said Timothy McVeigh used to take down that building. I don't believe that, but ammonium nitrate is explosive. Well, anyway, so in these airbags, there's a degradation and these things can go off. Now think about this. You're driving down the highway and your airbag deploys. You can't see a thing. You've just been hit in the face with an explosion. We've had brain bleeds. We've had shrapnel. We've had massive, massive injuries as a result of these airbag explosions, skull fractures, injuries that appear to look like a stab or gunshot wound, eye injuries. So when this thing goes off, you can have a heart attack while you're driving. You're just doing 70 miles an hour down the interstate and boom. This is serious stuff. So if you have a vehicle, I suggest you do some research and look up, is your make, model, and your vehicle on a recall list for these Takata, T-A-K-A-T-A, airbags? Because a lot of vehicles have them. Back to you, Rich.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I want to comment on what you mentioned earlier before the break, but I have a Dodge pickup, and it's had a recall for some type of a bolt or something that has to do with the parking brake not holding. That's what I got the impression it's about. They don't want to give me the full thing. Every time I go into the dealership, they say, oh, we don't have any parts for it. We don't have any parts for it. So basically, everybody is cutting down, except for the CEOs and the executives, and all, Wall Street and the big banks and everybody else who are expecting bailouts to come in the near future again, and send the bill to the little guy. So you were talking about, who do we call? Everything's corrupt. How do we fix this? How do we stand up to the system? We have.
Hold on. Can you hold on just one second? Before we leave this topic, you said that your Dodge pickup has a recall for the parking brake. You used the word parking brake. Now, it didn't used to be called a parking brake, but that's what people call it today. It used to have a different name. It used to be called an emergency brake. An emergency brake. The reason they called it an emergency brake was if your primary braking system failed, you always had the emergency brake. You'd either pull up a lever with your right hand or you'd reach down with your left hand and pull a handle, but you had an emergency brake. Now it's a parking brake because it's hardly effective in an emergency. So they renamed it.
And Vince, I'm not even sure if it's not the actual stick shift itself on the automatic transmission that you put into park. I keep asking, when I first got the letter, which seems like about a year ago, I kept asking. They kept saying, well, it's not in yet. So I'm not 100% sure what the recall is, but it's for my Dodge pickup 2011. And so who knows? The point is that we're collateral damage to the CEOs, to the executives, and the stockholders. And that's the bottom line. That's the conclusion to my point. But let me go back to what you were talking about. We have to be aware that there's a lot of infiltration under the guise of conservative hosts as well. There's a lot of good cop, bad cop theatrics out there. And you don't have to listen very long to figure out what information and half-truths they're willing to give up, but they're never going against their advertisers, which is often big pharma. They're never going against the elite aristocracy. And they also, even if it's through Hegelian dialectic or subliminal messaging, they're professional wordsmithers. They can still divide group against group. And we have to realize, now obviously the globalists / the Democrats are as well, but we have to keep in mind that it's not all Democrats. There's a big problem in the Republican Party too, and that's why names like rhinos and neocons, which are basically defined as sellouts to the American Party or people, sellouts to the little guy, exist. So the swamp is large, and we've gotten to a point where, whether it be intelligence agencies, whether it be police agencies, whether it be even the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, That's why people like William Benny, Kevin Shipp, heroes like that, whistleblowers, have made such a difference. Tom Fitton, there's a lot of people out there who are fighting for the people. And we have to be aware that one of the major MOs, you heard me say for years, that the powers that be want to distract, dumb down, and divide the people by every group imaginable. Well, they want to divide everyone and everything. And keep in mind, the super wealthy, the elite, sanction all messages. That's why race baiting, sex baiting, gender baiting, and wars is what they're trying to create. I mean, we live in a country now that the left, the globalists, are doing anything for the vote, and that's how you divide. And they even want illegal immigrants to vote. Anybody who does a little reading knows that this is happening. So why are there people selling out? Do the privileged left and the neocons and rhinos who are bought and paid for, are they guaranteed some type of seat on the lifeboat when the crapper hits the fan? And we have to start asking ourselves that question, and we have to start as citizen journalists try to find out what's going on behind the scenes. And this is why so many patriots are asking for declassification. Because if there's no rule of law, you heard me say 1,000,000 times, if not 1,000,000,000, that we need the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. But as long as they divide us by lowering the bars of standards and expectations, especially for getting a job and keeping a job, and there's no rule of law because everything is separately tiered based on what skin pigmentation shade, based on your gender, based on your sexual orientation, your religion, etc. This gives the aristocracy, which is mostly Democrat funders, the ability to say, oh, class envy. Oh, we're just a group. Oh, we need protection too. No, they don't, because they're the ones that have basically divided us, and we have to realize that. I know a lot of people, I've used it in the book, I mention this every once in a while, the story of the emperor has no clothes. Well, what's the message there? When I talk about political correctness, destroying America, and people drunk on the Kool-Aid of political correctness and can't see straight, I've given probably thousands of examples over the years. Well, it's not just about political correctness is truth or lack of it, but half the problem is lack of courage. So if everyone's afraid to say the truth, what was that message in the story of the emperor has no clothes? It was an innocent little boy who spoke up and said, the emperor has no clothes. And then everybody started laughing because nobody had the guts to say it. And it took a little innocent boy watching the parade on the sidelines to say, hey, look. So it's the same thing when I give that example of public/government worker pensions. They're broke, and we have to play a little chess, look with a little foresight, and see what they're doing. Just like Cloward and Piven strategy. They break the system by overloading the welfare food stamp system, okay? Long story short. But when you overload the pension system with false promises, so the government workers get all these great benefits, so they vote Democrat, which was the big government narrative for 30 years. Remember the narrative, folks, 30 years ago? Oh, if you're a Democrat, vote for big governments, you'll always have a job and great retirement and health care till you die, paid for by all the real people who can barely survive. Well, now, the Democrats have been hijacked by the globalist system, and they've created an alliance with the big corporations so they protect each other. They are fascists. That's why they call the patriots fascists. They're changing definitions of words. It's so important that we know this. I think I mentioned this years ago, Vince, when I did a little research, and I looked at the definition in encyclopedias and such. The pre-2009 definition was something of this nature, a system of government marked by a totalitarian dictator, the social and economic control, suppression of the opposition by the system. Now, what they're doing now is they're redefining it, and they're saying fascism is right-wing ideology or a movement that is fundamentally opposed to democracy and liberalism. First of all, they're not liberal. Second of all, we don't have a so-called democracy. We're supposed to have a republic. And I will finish this after the break, Vince.
Yeah, and Rich, let me know when you'd like me to play this 4-minute clip. I'm ready to go. We can do that after the break if you'd like. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich?
Yes, I'm here. Do you want me to keep going, Vince, or do you want to play the video?
Let's play it.
Okay, go ahead.
So, class, how Democrats try to divide our nation, from investmentwatchblog.com. Here we go.
During Senator Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign kickoff rally this past weekend, Bernie accused President Trump of dividing our nation by race, by gender, by religion, and by sexual orientation. Take a look.
Donald Trump wants to divide us up based on the color of our skin, based on where we were born, based on our gender, based on our religion or our sexual orientation. What we are about is doing exactly the opposite. We're going to bring our people together.
Okay, so let's take a quick journey back. Remember that time Donald Trump said Justice Brett Kavanaugh was guilty until proven innocent of sexual assault allegations because Brett Kavanaugh was a man? Remember that time Donald Trump said we should believe all women no matter what, even if women don't have proof or any substantiation of their allegations, even when women like Michael Avenatti's client, Julie Swetnick, blatantly lied? Oh, no, wait. That wasn't Donald Trump that was dividing our nation by gender and exercising unjust standards based on gender. That was the Democrats. Remember that time Donald Trump said women who vote Republican vote that way because their husbands make them? Oh, no, wait. That wasn't Donald Trump insulting women and our ability to make our own decisions. That was Hillary Clinton. Remember that time Donald Trump said men aren't allowed to have opinions on abortion because they're men, and all men are part of the oppressive patriarchy? Oh, no, wait. That wasn't Donald Trump dividing our nation by gender. That was the Democrats. Remember that time Donald Trump said women who vote Republican are voting against their own interests, as if the only thing women care about is abortion or free birth control? Oh, no, wait. That wasn't Donald Trump dividing our nation by gender and insulting women who care about things like, the economy and our Constitution. That was Michelle Obama. Remember that time Donald Trump divided our nation by race when he assumed the white high school kids from Covington Catholic High School were automatically racist because they were white and wore Make America Great Again hats? Remember when Donald Trump assumed because the kids were white that they had harassed a Native American, even when it was actually the other way around? Remember when the real story and the full video came out and showed the truth, that the white boys did not harass the Native American, and Donald Trump said, well, it may not be true in this case, but it easily could be true because the boys are white? Oh, wait, no. That wasn't Donald Trump who said that. It wasn't Donald Trump dividing our nation by race. That was the Democrats. Remember that time Donald Trump berated black Americans who vote Republicans, calling them Uncle Toms and telling them they're not really black if they vote for Trump? Oh, no, wait. That wasn't Donald Trump telling people they have to vote based on the color of their skin. That was Democrats. Remember that time Donald Trump attacked an evangelical Christian nominee for the Office of Management and Budget during the nominee's Senate confirmation hearing because the man believes in the gospel of Jesus Christ? Remember when Donald Trump said that believing in the gospel being the absolute truth made the Christian nominee, quote, not really the sort of people our country is about? Oh, no, wait. That wasn't Donald Trump being a religious bigot and dividing our nation by religion. That was Bernie Sanders himself. Next time you accuse somebody of dividing our nation by gender, by race, and by religion, I suggest you look in the mirror first. And that is my final point.
Want to see more videos?
There you go. So, how Democrats try to divide our nation. InvestmentWatchBlog.com. Rich, your comments?
Yeah, well, I can comment on that for the next 6 hours. Unfortunately, we don't have that much. But, when I talk about distracting, dumbing down, and dividing, and I've given thousands of examples over the years, and I talk about how certain groups are being used, being duped, being played by saying we demand to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job because we're victims, and we deserve to play the victim group status card. Okay? You got to see what's happening to America. When the appreciation of work, the dignity of work, and the opportunity and the value of work is gone in a country, then there's no place to go but down. So if you're a hyphenated American, if you're hyphenated by your skin pigmentation shade, by your gender, by your sexual orientation, or religion, etc.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Sheben's with us. OffGridMontana.com. Rich, did you want to continue your discussion, or do you want to move on to another topic?
Yeah, let me put a little exclamation point on that, if I may, Vince. Everything today is propaganda, false flags, and lies. Everything is theater. Everything is to set up a solution for a problem that's been manufactured by design. So when you hear things get taken out of context, one thing that comes to mind, remember when Trump said, why do we have all these people coming in from crap hole countries? Of course, he didn't use the term crap hole. I'm on AM, FM radio right now, so I have to use it. But he wasn't referring to skin color. He wasn't referring to sexual orientation. He wasn't referring to gender. He was referring to the fact that these people come from dictatorships, from socialist countries, from countries where these people are not used to controlling their own destiny. People who don't have freedom that Americans have. They don't have a constitution. So when he said crap hole countries, he meant in the context of the end result to the American people. It could be in detriment of crime. It could be not being vetted because of skill sets and education. It could be all those things and many more. So you got to, what the Democrats, who are again hijacked by the Globalist Party, use is they'll take some key phrases and they'll say it over and over again with repetition. So the followers have talking points out there. We have to basically look behind the messages. Another thing that comes to mind is the propaganda when OAC, a.k.a. Sandy Cortez. Remember just a week or two ago she said that we shouldn't have children. Now, I read an article that was saying that there's not enough women who sold out their fathers, husbands, brothers, and especially their sons. If women have less sons, maybe they can sell out the rest of the males in society. That's called divide and conquer. This is pretty new information in the last 24 hours. Sandy Cortez, basically there's an organization out there called Justice Democrats that says that Sandy Cortez was casted for Congress, auditions. So basically she's taking orders and following scripts. And when she goes off of script, you can tell the way she bumbles with the words and talks out of context and doesn't even make a point. So it's pretty obvious what's happening here. Everything is bought and paid for on the left. So we got to be careful of all the propaganda and the divide and conquer of everything. And we have to put it in perspective. And, Vince, I just want to go over a few articles very, very quickly. And you tell me if this sounds like America. Leaked audio. Google discusses steering the conservative movement. Next article. Fantastic thread on liberal hate crime hoaxes, all falsely blamed on Trump supporters. Would you have ever guessed, America, that all these hoaxes, these hate crimes, have been staged. Next article. Illinois law would ban landlords from reporting illegal alien tenants. You heard that correctly. There is now a law to ban Americans who turn in basically people who are breaking the law. I can't say it any plainer. I know it sounds actually stupid, but now there's going to be a law in Illinois that would ban landlords from reporting illegal tenants. You can't make this stuff up. Warren Buffett warns against public pension debt and not moving to a state who has a public pension crisis. Okay? Do you remember what I just said about public pensions and government workers? And I gave a couple of examples just earlier in the show. Next article. Facebook bans zero hedge. Folks, I probably read, 50, 75 different sites on a regular basis. News sites, economics, traders. I would say Zero Hedge is probably in the top 3 as far as great sites. They have a great work ethic. I read them all weekend. I read them on holidays. They're always coming out with new articles. So I want to tip my hat to the folks at Zero Hedge. I think you guys are awesome. You're great. You make people think. Even though nobody agrees with anything 100%, you certainly pull out the facts. You're not afraid to be politically incorrect. I love your economic stuff, but you also dovetail that with social, financial, and political news and information. So I want to thank Zero Hedge for what you do. Next article. The Democrats unconstitutionally, you know what? This is a very lengthy article with a lot of information, so I'm just going to give a brief summary. It's in the National Review. The Democrats' election reform bill is an unconstitutional authoritarian power grab. And they basically call, it's referring to H.R. 1, which expands Americans' access to the ballot box. It's For the People Act. Whenever you read things like that, folks, it's basically for the aristocracy to grab control. That's what it is. And in reality, it's a bill that represents an extraordinary federal power grab, and it's unbelievable what's happening to America. It's going to be against free speech. It's going to be against everything in the Constitution. And it's quite a lengthy article with all the pork thrown in this bill. But it's gonna basically eliminate, give voting rights to eventually to everybody, whether they're a citizen or not. They're going to expand the definition of lobbyists beyond the bounds of reason. I mean, it's kind of like a Twilight Zone episode in its own way. So I urge you to read this and see what the left is doing. And the left is not for the people. The left is for the aristocracy, the people who are funding their campaigns. Now, keep in mind what I said a few moments ago. Now these new Democrats are being funded and casted and holding auditions from an organization called Justice Democrats. And they're literally following orders and scripts. This is just like Hollywood. So I want you to be aware of this and just think about those last 6 articles I just read, and think about if you think we are in America, if you think we still have a Constitution, if freedom and liberty isn't in jeopardy. Okay, Vince, I'm going to get off my soapbox here, and I will let you continue. Thank you for, again, always allowing me to exercise my First Amendment rights.
A couple quick comments. You mentioned the recall on the parking brake on your Dodge. If that is the case, there's a component within the transmission. It's in the output shaft of the transmission. It's called a parking pawl, P-A-W-L. It's a component on automatic transmission that prevents the transmission output shaft from moving. So think of it like a hook that grabs a gear, if you will, and it prevents it from moving. Now, what does it cost to fix that? Well, it can cost over $1,000 for this little tiny part that you can hold between your two fingers. But where it's located, it's expensive to fix. So why would that happen in the first place? I guess not paying attention. Next thing, recalls. What cars are the most recalled? Well, Ford's number 1 with the most recalls. Chevrolet, number 2. BMW, number 3. Toyota, 4. Dodge, number 5. Honda's number 6. Unfortunately, that's because of the Takata airbag recall. Now, not all vehicles have Takata airbags. GMC's number 7. Nissan, number 8. Volvo's number 9. And Mercedes-Benz is number 10. Yeah. So those are the vehicles that are recalled. Now, what do you do about it? Well, this is USA Prepares, and I'm going to tell you. Here's what I did. I went to a search engine, and I typed in the following 4 words. Is my car recalled? Okay. Then you'll end up with a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's recall lookup. It's at nhtsa.gov. It'll take you right there. And then you can type in either the VIN or the year, make, and model, and you'll find out if your vehicle has been recalled. And if it has, make that dealer fix it. Okay? Those are my thoughts on that. We played the clip about the Democrats, and I heard Bernie Sanders, and I got a chance to see him again, and it turns my stomach. That guy, can you imagine him being president/CEO of the United States of America? His mannerisms, his voice, his appearance. His appearance is like that, to me, is like that of a panhandler. He's unkempt, he's disheveled. He looks like he's not ready for applying for a job, which is what he's doing. He is applying for a job. He wants to be president. I can't believe it. He'll take us right down the drain. And yet, there are so many stupid people who like him. What are they thinking? I don't know. I don't get it. And one other thing I wanted to mention very quickly is web hosting. When I signed up with Bluehost, it was like $3 a month. But you could get something a little better for about $5 a month. And they still offer that $2.95 per month basic web hosting. But what does it cost me by the time they're done fleecing me? Well over $100. I'm sorry, $300 a year with all these add-ons. Be really careful with those guys. They bring you in, and then they fleece you. And recently, and you asked me a very interesting question, and I think we ought to just share this with our class for just a moment or so. The question you asked me, and I'm paraphrasing, at what price would you buy a new truck? Was that the question?
Yeah, I always, folks, Vince Finelli has a lot of information about economy, about financial news, political stuff, shows social information. But when I talk to Vince Finelli about vehicles, I can actually feel and hear his neck swelling in Missouri over the phone lines, just so you know. So this man loves cars. I just had to throw that in. But yes, Vince, my question is, where is his, you made it very clear. I've always asked, when I go to a dealership and they're kind of a little desperate selling cars for really good prices, and then you look up what it costs for the repairs, the labor, and the new part today compared to the old parts of an older truck like I have. It's quadruple the price. So it makes a lot of sense that after that 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty, is over, they're going to fleece you. So when I ask the question is, what's the price where a person in the bottom 93% would say, okay, this is a good deal to buy new, because the disposable nature of the parts, for example, where you have to take off the frickin' front tire to change the headlamp, for example, is going to get so burdensome, so costly that the average Joe will dread making that investment. So where is the break-off point? If I walked into a dealership and I wanted to buy another Dodge pickup, how much should that cost be with the present value of the Federal Reserve note? What would that price be, in your opinion, for where I should buy a new vehicle versus a used one?
Well, I mentioned on that phone call that's easy. There is no price. I would not buy a new vehicle. And just let me give you, one example, class. The average or the typical labor cost to replace a water pump and a timing belt would cost between $200 and $900 for a vehicle today. That's the labor cost. Forget the part. There is if you had a Mercedes and it had a convertible top, I looked up the price to just buy the hydraulic pump to raise up that convertible top and lower it. You push the button, top goes up, push the button, the top goes down. How much is the hydraulic pump that lives in the trunk under the spare tire of an older Mercedes? How much is that? It's like $2,000. These that's a Mercedes, but Mercedes is not alone on all these expensive parts. The American car dealers and manufacturers don't want to be left out either. So their prices are astronomical. And when you talked about taking off the front tire to change a headlamp, that's not an exaggeration. We had to buy special adapters for our lift. The lift brand that we have is made by a company called Rotary. Many would consider that to be the finest automotive lift manufacturer there is. I do. So it's not like this is some cheap, junky, poorly engineered lift that we have. But we had to buy special adapters to pick up late model cars and put them up in the air to work on them. Because if we didn't have these little adapters to go on the lift pads, they're called pinch, P-I-N-C-H, pinch weld adapters. If we didn't have them and we just used these heavy polyurethane pads to pick up the car, we would bend the unibody. We'd bend the body of the car if we didn't have these adapters. It's ridiculous. These cars are flimsy. They're cheap. They're cheesy. In my opinion, they are hardly roadworthy, especially in a crash. So the answer is, I wouldn't buy a new vehicle. We'll be right back. So, Rich, buying a new car is not in the cards for me. I don't want one. I don't want to be held hostage by the dealership or what it's typically called the stealership, because they've got the $30,000 computer that I don't have that can tune my vehicle or fix it when some sensor goes bad. I do have diagnostic tools, but I don't have a $30,000 one. It makes no sense to have one. The average cost to paint a hood of a car or truck can range between $1,000 to $3,500. Now, we're talking about painting a car hood. We're not talking about buying a hood hinges. We're talking about painting the hood that's on your vehicle. I bought a whole Mercedes, that my best car I ever bought. Still drive it. It's at the farm right now. It's ready to go. I use it all the time. It's a 1996 Mercedes E-Class mid-level diesel. I paid $3,000 for it. I paid $3,000 for my Chevy pickup truck a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago. $3,000 for the entire car. It costs as much as $3,500 to paint your hood on your car, class. This is crazy. I mean, I bought a whole car and a whole truck for less than it cost to paint the hood on someone's car. I'm talking about an entire car. Wheels, body, tires, engine, transmission, drivetrain, suspension, seats, windows, everything. $3,000. I'm not in the market to buy a new car. I'm not in the market to be fleeced 3 years later by the factory and by the dealership. I'm not going to let that happen. So the question probably you're asking is, okay, so how new of a car would I buy if I were buying a used car? I would be hard-pressed to buy anything newer than 2004. 2004. So there's your answer, Rich.
Well, Vince, let me play a little devil's advocate here, and let me preface that with, I always love my Economic 101 updates, and you just look at the numbers and the math, because a lot what you were talking about was numbers and math, the bottom line, the price. But when you see what's happening in America, decline in exports, heavy debt at every level, which I've basically talked about for hours on this show, declining savings, 80% of people living paycheck to paycheck, group identity politics, nepotism, deciding who wins and loses and who gets the job, aging demographics and low birth rates from the young, poor domestic growth rates, underemployed workers at pretty much every age and every stage in almost every industry. Supply and demand in free markets are pretty much or as close to extinct as we've ever experienced in America. So when you look at the prognosis of the health of the average Joe American, of the bottom 93% of income earners, I'm going to pose the question that you were talking about in the context of our discussion regarding math. So if you're an average Joe and you don't have any skill sets regarding mechanics, now keep in mind, Vince, you are as close to an expert in mechanics as they come because you love doing it. This is, when you talk about cars and fixing cars, your neck swells. It's kind of like me regarding nature and hunting and fishing, okay? So that being said, you have certain skill sets because you love doing it that most people, and I say most people, I mean the great majority of Americans don't have. So take away the passions, take away the skill sets, and re-answer that question for somebody who feels they might need to buy a new or newer vehicle to reduce the hassle, which is a hassle cost, and reduce the nickel and diming that's going to occur that they can't do because they don't have the skill sets. So how would you, if I was to put it in that context with the prognosis of our economy for the little guy, which looks very bleak, with the many headwinds of future rates of growth that I've discussed over the years, not to mention our debt and government promises and everything else and the whole rigged game, if I put it in that context to the average Joe who has no skill sets, are they going to look at your answer being a little different regarding avoiding some hassle, paying a little more now, even if they have to buy it on time, which means they pay interest? Or would they still be willing after this conversation to buy an older used vehicle that's going to nickel and dime them to death and they have to constantly fix and either trust a mechanic, pay the cost, or learn a skill themselves that they might not want to learn because it's not their passion? So how would you approach that answer in that kind of a new context, if you will?
Okay. We have two instructors who are gearheads, actually three. Charles in Ohio, Lee Wickenhauser, who is at GCN, the network, and Scotty Kilmer, who is all over YouTube. So with those three instructors, here's what I would do. I would want to make a friend with someone like one of those instructors, whom you've heard on the air at USA Prepares. They can talk all kinds of details about cars. They also all know which cars work really well, which ones are problematic, which ones are money pits. And you can talk with them and say, well, here's our situation. Here's what my household is like. Here's what I'm trying to do. And that mechanic, that person who has a passion for automobiles, can guide you into which vehicles make sense. Then you can select of those vehicles in a discussion format that makes sense, which ones would make the most sense, which ones would be the freest from nuisance repairs, which ones are the most reliable. Now, when you take reliability and you put fun to drive, they're not necessarily in the same sentence. So a car like a muscle car, that's a lot of fun to drive, but you won't get to drive it every day. You'll probably be calling in work and, saying, I'm not going to be here today because my car's getting towed in 20 minutes, that kind of thing. Well, if you talk to a mechanic, they can help you find the right model. Then what you do is when you find that one, whether it be a private sale or from a dealership, you say to the person selling, I'll tell you what, I'm interested in this. Here's the amount of money I'm willing to pay, but I want to bring it to Lee Wickenhauser, Charles in Ohio, Scotty Kilmer, Vin Finelli, and I'd like my mechanic to look at it. And then what would happen? The seller would say, oh, so you don't trust me? Well, then you use the Ronald Reagan response. Absolutely, I trust you. I'm just going to verify it. That's how I would do it. And then once you've made that friend with that mechanic, and by the way, that mechanic will charge you to look at that vehicle. Lee Wickenhauser, I believe, charges between, at a low of $50, depending on what he has to do, and maybe $100 to review that vehicle and tell you what you're facing in terms of repair. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me to do that. $100 to make sure you're not buying a money pit or a clunker or a lemon makes a lot of sense to me. That's what people do here. People call us and ask us if we will look at vehicles for them to help them avoid making a mistake. Well, once you do that, then you have a friend in the automotive business, and that's the person that can help you. And typically what happens next is, well, my car is doing this, the one that you helped me buy, and here are the symptoms. Oh, well, here's what that means. It's probably going to cost between X and Y dollars to fix that. Or you don't really have to worry about that now, or you better bring it in tomorrow. Don't take it anywhere else. Come straight here because it's going to fail and it's going to be a big dollar item. So that's my approach to it. That's what I would do. But would I buy a new one? Absolutely not. Because you get fleeced. We're talking $35,000 for the average American car today. $35,000 and change. $35,000. And here's what you do, class. Go next time you're at the Chinese factory outlet and you're in the parking lot. Push on the center of your driver's door with your thumb. Push in on the sheet metal, okay? And see what kind of resistance you have. Compare an older car to a newer car. Compare an Asian car to an American car. Compare those cars to a Mercedes and a BMW. You won't believe how thin the new cars are. And when you push them in with your thumb, you're going to go, wow, that's my thumb. Imagine that thing getting hit by another vehicle. And you won't want one. I don't care what the crash reports say. Car manufacturers are taking steel out of vehicles and replacing it with plastic. Show me a car today that has a chrome bumper. Show me one. Okay? Why is that? Because the metal's expensive and the chrome is expensive. It's been replaced with a plastic coat called a bumper. Behind that is sometimes styrofoam, and behind that is some steel bar. But if you get that bumper damaged, someone backs into you and scratches that scratches the bumper. Can you imagine that? That's going to cost about $500. And it has to be paint matched. And that's going to be another $300. So you can spend $1,000 easily on getting your bumper scratch fixed. It's crazy. It used to cost $50 for an entire bumper, and you could put it on yourself. We'll be right back. Well, Rich, I take very seriously the things that you say on the air here. So during the last commercial break, I picked up the telephone in the studio, and I called Lee Wickenhauser at GCN. And I said, Lee, are you available to discuss buying a used automobile on Friday at 10 o'clock? He said, be delighted. So on Friday at 10 o'clock, we're going to have a special on how to buy a used car. So, class, if you're thinking of buying a used car and you'd like to ask Lee Wickenhauser or me what we think, we'll be glad to tell you. And you can call us right on the air at 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Friday, this Friday, at 866-582-9933. We'll be glad to help you. Back to you, Rich Scheben.
Yeah, it's with the economy heading south for the little guy, the bottom 93% of income earners is getting to the point where we have to start thinking outside the box, becoming more self-sufficient. And not everybody does everything, folks. You know, we live off grid here, grow our own produce, hunt our own meat, catch our own fish, can. We do everything possible to be self-sufficient, but we don't drill our own oil and refine our own gasoline. And that's one thing I am definitely not as a mechanic. Maybe because I don't have the passion for it, but I've always had so many interests and hobbies, I didn't have the time for it. So in a society where everything's real and you can no longer get a job through hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, and the group you're in decides your future, we have to start doing different things in a very fake, phony world. In fact, I'm reading an article here on the New York Post, a paper I very rarely quote. TV actresses Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, among dozens of people charged with paying bribes to get their kids into top universities in a widespread college admissions scam, according to reports Tuesday. More than 40 people have been indicted in a scheme that allegedly involved students gaining entrances to school, including Georgetown, Stanford, Wake Forest, University, UCLA, and Yale, as recruited athletes regardless of their athletic ability. And it goes into more specificity and detail. But see, this is what is happening in America today. Nothing's real. If you can buy it, it could be sedition, it could be treason, it can be espionage, it can be your kid's college degree. Nothing matters. And this is why I always say 90% of the college degrees are worthless, because these people take subsidies in the form of millions and billions of dollars from the taxpayer, and then they screw the little guy, and they give the big guy who has the money to break without even earning it. And this is why we have to be aware. That's the same thing with economics. They change the terms, they change the definitions, they change the policies. When it comes to the balance sheet, the Fed balance sheet, and the Treasury, they're going to use terms like balance sheet normalization, slashing assets on balance, unwinding, reductions of this and that, quantitative tightening, rolling off to maturity, and while the numbers are always under revision. So we have to be aware of the propaganda behind everything and look with foresight and see what these people are really trying to do. And it's mostly distract, dumb down, and divide, but they want to make sure that they don't practice what they preach. And that's why I've always talked about practice what you preach laws. But see, when you lower the bars of standards and expectations, even for these rich people who are buying their kids' college degrees, you're basically degrading and disrespecting them and saying that you're insulting their work ethic, their ability, and their intelligence. You've heard me say this many, many times. And this is why we need the same rules, laws, and accountability, truth. And if someone has less consequences for their behavior, we should do it too. But when you reward mediocrity for decade after decade, mostly based on what group they're in, whether it be skin pigmentation, gender, sexual orientation, or wealth, you destroy America from within. Because you turn America into a law of diminishing returns, you eliminate knowledge and opportunity, ingenuity and productivity, innovation for everybody except for the super elite who can buy and pay their way in. Vince?
Agreed. And also, you mentioned Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge has been banned by Zuckerberg, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Zero Hedge. Great website. ZeroHedge.com. Rich Scheben, thanks so much for being with us. Class above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up.